Okay, got some work done. I'm going to show it off here in a second. Before that, I just want to say a couple things. I know that no one ever watches my videos, but just, well, to the people who watch my videos, I appreciate it very, very much. But, you know, you can see that I don't get views. Very, very small number of people watch my video. And that's because a very small number of people are programming video games with Visual Batari BASIC. And that's fine. But the point that I'm making is that I'm open with what I talk about, even though my videos are boring and kind of contained. The thing that happened with Charlie Kirk is weird. I've said in my videos before that I'm not a political person. I don't. That if you were to, evaluate what I believe in, most people would try to bottle me up as a leftist when I'm definitely not a leftist. I don't want to be associated with the left or the radical left. They think that a vegan is automatically radical left. And I have a big problem with that. Now, okay, people who become vegan because they are like, whatever, the doomed population that has to adhere to some political ideal, and so they choose veganism, that's different. There are so many different vegans. There are vegans who are vegans because they want a healthy diet. And so that's why they came up with the term plant-based, because veganism, some people think it's a cult. Some people think it's insane. Right? Some people are vegans because they are dating a hot chick who's vegan. Or this girl is with a bodybuilder and he's vegan. Right? And they're all going to stop being vegans. They're going to stop. They're going to, oh, he broke my heart and now I'm eating meat again. Or, oh man, she was hot, but I had to eat some steak, Or, oh, my friends wouldn't hang out with me anymore, so I started eating meat again. Like, all of those reasons that are like anything to do with popularity. There's this sliver of people who will have an epiphany, almost a Buddhist kind of holy awakening, where they realize that ants are alive and that they're moving around in their homes underground right now, and that they're on a quest and that they have feelings and they do things. And there are birds making nests right now and laying eggs, and they're with a mate. There are sharks in the sea that are just swimming out around. Right at this very second, there's a shark swimming in the ocean right now. And it's weeding out the weak and broken, the ones that aren't in the little schools of fish. It's weeding out the broken mess so that the ocean is cleaner. It's doing the same thing that carnivorous animals do, only in the ocean, right? When you have the same awakening and epiphany that I had, then you become vegan for the reason that, in my opinion, is the right reason to become one. And you then become a person who probably won't go back because you're giving up on something very powerful, right? So when people associate veganism with with an idea of leftism or radical behavior, yeah, it does fit in with that. And I'm sure Charlie Kirk would think vegans are insane, malnourished, abusing children, anything. Pick anything, any bad thing about it, right? But that's the point I'm not making, or the point I'm making about the situation is that I am not a radical leftist because I'm vegan. And I actually liked Charlie Kirk and a lot of the stuff that he did. For one big reason, I love how we have the freedom to assemble and debate things, our freedom of speech. You know, freedom of speech was from living in kingdoms and empires where you were not allowed to talk about change. You weren't allowed to talk about how you really felt in the open. Everyone would stab you in the back. Your neighbor would hear you complaining about the sheriff, who would then write a letter to the magistrate or get in touch with the local authorities. They'd have your butt in a cage or have people throwing spoiled tomatoes at your face before they chop off your fingers or something terrible like that. You know, freedom of speech means that I can assemble and peacefully debate things in this country. And that's what Charlie Kirk meant to me, was that freedom to assemble and peacefully argue your point with other people. And veganism is definitely on that platform because vegans have to debate. Now, scientists and doctors, mostly dietitians, but also cardiologists and medical doctors, medicine doctors, ones that I believe in because of their actions, like the former president of the American School of Cardiology and Dr. Michael Greger, Milton Mills. These are doctors who, in my mind, from their actions and what they've said and done, written and presented, have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the human organism is a herbivorous organism. And that the only real diet for a human being is herbs and fruits and vegetables, legumes and tubers and whatever, potatoes and just everything from nature that doesn't have to do with murdering an animal or eating blood and worms and shit. Okay, we are not meant to eat those things. It always does bad things to us. It's never been good or right. Like with milk, we're not supposed to drink cow milk, obviously. About a little over 70% of the planet doesn't even have the enzyme to break apart milk after they're an infant, after they're a baby. And that's because we are not meant to consume cow milk. It's weird, after realizing and being instructed and educated on the subject, what it does to you, especially to minorities or people that aren't from the white north. Like, there's only a small section of the planet, comparatively, that have that enzyme to process milk after infancy. And it might be a survival mechanism in case clean water is not something that can be found, or just to supplement fats or something like that. But the end result is asthma, allergies, prostate cancer, breast cancer, obesity, diabetes, addiction, and it's being sold to minorities like it's this great new fad that everyone should jump on board with, and it's somehow healthy. Now, part of the reason I'm talking about that is because it directly relates to what may have been the cause, or the force behind Charlie Kirk's assassination. Because there are people in this world like emperors and presidents and kings, and also very, very rich people, like super rich elitist CEOs and stuff like that. They actually are legitimate targets for assassination from societal perspectives, right? I would not consider Charlie Kirk a legitimate target for assassination, or wouldn't have, I guess. But then a person online showed a video that they saw from a week ago. Okay, a week ago, Charlie Kirk posted a question asking how much money Big Pharma was paying for these people that are constantly arguing with Senator Kennedy? And that's a great question. And so then right afterwards, a post was made from someone named Charlie Kirk that said that he was found dead in his home and that we'll all mourn him and stuff like that. This was over a week ago. This is before, obviously, what just happened. So, over a week ago, on social media, it was posted apparently by Charlie Kirk that he had died in his home. And it was right after he had posted the question and shown real data regarding the amount of investment into the support for Big Pharma at the political level. So he was protesting it. Then a comment came up that seemed like a threat on his life, basically, because he wasn't dead. At least I don't think he was. And then here, fast forward 1 week later, he's debating in his little booth that says, "Prove me wrong," like he always is. And someone shoots him in the neck. I mean, he has 2 young children and a wife, and he just broke 30. Okay, he's a fetus. He's a baby. He's only 30 years old. Okay, I'll be 50 years old next year. This guy did not deserve to be made a target for assassination. So, and you know, I would debate him about veganism till I'm blue in the face. That's fine, but I would never get violent with him. I would never get to the point where, you know, there would be any kind of violence. You know, it's very simple. And this is something that the left needs to understand, that this virtuous understanding that they don't have. Whoever's doing this doesn't understand this, okay? Regardless of what you believe in, if you impress it upon others and you expect them to change, they can't change if they're dead. So if you thought there was something inherently wrong with Charlie Kirk's beliefs, but he was publicly, openly willing to debate with anyone those beliefs, then you should believe that by debating with him, eventually you can peacefully convince him or educate him in a way that can change him. You have to believe that other people can be changed, but you don't murder them, obviously. So when you become a murderer or an assassin, you know, then your beliefs have nothing to do with anything. You've decided that regardless of whether someone's right or wrong, if they can prove you wrong or right, or you can prove yourself right, none of that matters. You're going to murder somebody over it. And so now that has, you know, left the realm of logic. Because when you believe in something, like I believe in veganism, not as a political leftist agenda. I believe that, okay, let's put it this way. Vegans say that if you became vegan, it would save the world. And it probably would, because the largest generator of you know, global warming, fossil fuel impact on the environment, all of that is from the meat industry. What they do destroys the ocean, it destroys the land, it destroys the reefs, it destroys everything. That's something that can be proven. And if people stop eating meat, collectively on a whole, everyone, then yes, it can save this planet. But at the same time, if we all stop driving cars, stop using electricity, stop running air conditioners, stop eating at fast food, there are endless things that we all need to stop doing if we want to contribute to the restoration of our world. And as much as it might not sound good to say it, veganism is not that political stance. At the very core, veganism is you do not participate in what you see as the destruction of innocent life for your own good, for whatever you want. So I don't want animals to be tortured or murdered or killed for things that I feel that I want or need. Okay? But it took education and very profound, deep understanding. So, if you ask a Buddhist, should everybody be a Buddhist? Should we all just convert to Buddhism? I imagine most of them will probably say that it takes a special kind of understanding to reach that plateau. And they have accepted that people can't do that. So that's how I feel about veganism, is that you have to have an epiphany almost like you're being chosen. And that I can't rightfully expect everyone in the world to shift into that mode the way that I did. Because what happened to me was seeking out truth and seeking out understanding and being educated by several different sources. Philosophy, medicine, religion, syncretism was a big, powerful mover for me. And just, all of those things combined. So you can't reach that plateau. And it is a plateau. Veganism is above the world because you're willing to sacrifice that thing that people consider necessary, which is really an abhorrent comfort, for the sake of sentient life forms. You have raised yourself above that. So when someone says, oh, well, veganism isn't healthy, you don't become a vegan for health reasons. If you do, you're a plant-based diet chooser. You're doing it for other reasons. So when you actually realize an animal is alive and intelligent and existing in its own world, and you're starting to think, you're stretching out with your mind. And in your mind, it's not just a flat ground in your front yard, it's millions and millions of living things, all in hidden cities, all doing their own work. It's not just a tree sitting there, it's a home for endless animals, and they're all inside there like a city, living and doing their own thing. It's not just a cloudy sky with stars and with moon and with sun. It's a field where living beings move back and forth and go to their different places and do different things. And I do not have the right to destroy them. I don't know their world and they don't know mine. But we can communicate with each other and integrate with each other in a way that can benefit both of us. And so it is like expecting a blind person to instantly regain their sight, or a deaf person to instantly begin to hear, or someone with a heart that is broken because of what they've done to suddenly have their heart repaired and be able to have a deeper understanding. I don't expect the majority of people to be able to change like that. And when you become a vegan, you might feel that it's your job to get up on the highest soapbox and point out everybody's wrongdoings. But you'll also, by doing that, forget that you must have had a profound change in your understanding to reach that point. Now, when I was a small child, I was vegan. I was vegan out the womb and forced to eat meat and drink milk. I thought milk was disgusting. I thought meat was absolutely horrid and disgusting. I was repulsed by it before anyone ever tried to convince me otherwise. I looked at a chicken leg and saw tendons and muscles and blood and blackness and greasy grossness and skin, and I really was like, I can't eat this. This is a leg. This is somebody's leg. So I had the seeds of that feeling and understanding in the very beginning of my life, and most people didn't. Most people pop out, someone hands them a gross-ass chicken leg, and they just eat everything right off it, and there's nothing left but a bone. And they're probably chewing on the bone. So I don't expect everyone to be able to understand that. And I do think that I am better for it. And I think the world would be saved by it. But I don't expect people to change. I think that would be expecting too much. So am I a leftist? No. No, I believe that, we have more things to buy in the store when the store has more money. We have more things that we can choose when the country is more powerful and richer. I believe our country needs to have a gigantic, powerful military with weapons. We need to have powerful leaders who will govern to make our country more powerful and richer. I think that humans need to be controlled and stopped to a degree from what they're doing. And especially with the case of these, race-related murders and also this political-related murder. It's weird because when they said, first thing I heard about it, I turned on YouTube, oh my God, Charlie Kirk's been assassinated. And what it said was, this was a political assassination. But that's weird because I disagree with that. Because he was a 31-year-old innocent man who believed in the most wonderful aspect of our culture in America, in the United States of America, that is the ability to freely assemble and debate with each other peacefully. And whoever murdered him, they might as well have painted a banner in the sky that said, peacefully assemble and debate all of these things that you're... Now, what the left then is going to try to do is create a war or a civil war or some kind of reaction that's even more violent. I believe people should have ways, we should all be guaranteed our Second Amendment rights, and I believe in the Constitution and I believe in the rights that we have. But what happened to him was horrid. It was like the worst possible thing that could have happened. And he was commenting on the murder of the model that was on a subway or whatever. The guy just, and people are talking about that, how all of the people around him were black people and they were all sitting there watching and doing nothing. They watched it like what it made me think was that was their car and no one else was allowed to be in it but them. And they were just allowing this to happen. And the guy had been set free from prison over a dozen times for heinous crimes that would indicate he was a very dangerous person. They said they're moving to remove the judge from power who kept setting him free. And if you look at the guy's face, there's something seriously wrong with the guy. Like, his eyebrows are way, way, way up on the top of his head, and his eyes are really weird. Like, he looks absolutely terrified. Like, if you see somebody draw in a comic book or a cartoon, someone that saw God or saw some kind of horrific, powerful thing that changed him, he looks like his face is paused in that kind of response. I've never seen anyone with eyebrows that high up on their head, way up on and their eyes so terrified. He looks supernaturally terrified. And he murdered a woman out of, completely unnecessarily murdered somebody, right in front of everybody, and no one stopped him. Anyone there was watching and seeing what was happening and unfolding, and with, considerably less effort, collectively they could have stopped him like it was nothing. Everybody that was around him is as much responsible for what he did as he is. Because they did absolutely nothing. They just let it happen, and then no one stopped him. So, it's really bizarre. And but my point from all that was, first off, I really liked Charlie Kirk the way he was. Just the aspect where public debate, peaceful public debate was his focus. And whoever did that is the devil. You are the actual real devil in this world to do that to a 31-year-old man with 2 young children and a wife, they're never going to see him again. Also, that 1 week ago, he was posting on media that he had died in his home right after protesting and showing actual data about the money being spent by Big Pharma to politically attack Kennedy. So now that I've gotten that off my chest, gotten it out of the way. If you've noticed my characters, some of them look different than each other. I'm working on, and I talked about this in previous videos, a way to have certain details on each character using the missile sprite. Okay, so the missile sprite, you have one with each of your characters. In the multi-sprite kernel, you have ones with your sprites. You have two in the standard kernel. Now, in the standard kernel, the height of the missile can be anything, and the width can be 1, 2, 4, or 8. With this one, the multi-sprite kernel, the height can only be 1 pixel, but the width can be 1, 2, 4, or 8. So I'm using those to create little details. So if you look, the guy on the right here has a kind of a mustache and a beard. That is from a missile sprite detail. The guy on the left has a nose and his eyes are kind of squinted down. That's from missiles. Now, because I'm doing 2 frames for every image, then I have 2 for each character. So I can put them in 2 different locations and create these effects. So let's zoom in. Excuse me. So here we have an effect from that missile to make a distinct character. And I've changed some things around. This is actually, excuse me, I've seriously terrible allergies that cause asthma attacks constantly. Recently, my daughter's room got cleaned out and a loft bed was put in her room and everything was rearranged and stuff. And whenever anybody does that in this house, I go through a period of suffocation for anywhere from a few days to a week. It's been a couple of weeks now, and I'm just running through inhalers and I'm suffocating. So if I die suddenly, it was probably because of dust in my home, and there's really nothing I can do about it. It just sucks. I noticed though today, before my kids left, I felt compelled to tell them both that I loved them, and I've been suffocating constantly, and because I've been a stay-at-home dad for like over 15 years now, I've relied on my wife for everything. I mean, anything monetary, and I used to pawn everything that I'd owned just to get things that I wanted. Sometimes it was to feed addictions, even though I didn't really know how to get the things to feed my addictions. My wife knew how to do that, and I didn't know how to get the things back. So I'd find myself using my own possessions. That's why I said when I gave up on drugs about 10 years ago, I lost all my friends, but I gained all my stuff. So and I said, you know, that if you want to lose all your friends and gain all your stuff, then quit doing drugs. That's what actually happens. So I am still a stay-at-home dad. I spend every single day taking care of kids. This morning I woke up at 4 something, like 4:45, and then at 5:45 I made lunches for my kids. At 6:30 I woke them up. At 7:15 I sent them out the door, and I'll be drying dishes and putting them away and making rice, Asian rice and burrito rice dishes so that I can eat them or my daughter can eat them later. My son's really picky. He wants what he wants, so he'll make his own dinner half the time just because he doesn't want to eat what I'm cooking. But and my daughter sometimes will make her own food too. They know how to operate the stove top and make ramen noodles and stuff like that. So, but for the most part, I make food for them, dinner and lunches, and I wake them up, and I'm here watching them 24/7. I'm the one that puts them to bed. I'm around them all the time. Well, this morning I told them I loved them, and they I don't know, they don't say that they love me back anymore, and I don't know why. So yeah. But I hope they know that I love them, and that everything is, everything I do is with them right there on my heart and in my mind. But I don't know, sometimes I think I'm not going to be around much longer just because I have such asthma problems. And now when I was young and first had allergy tests for my asthma, the doctors recognized how bad it was. And they asked my parents to not smoke in the same house that I was in, to put plastic over my bed sheets and over my pillowcases. They taught my mom how to do steam treatments if I couldn't get, if my rescue inhaler wouldn't work, if I couldn't get medicine. Sometimes I got taken to the emergency room because I was suffocating. My mom had to do that several times. I had a severe prednisone overdose by prescription. I didn't do it on purpose. It was my doctor. I had a doctor. I went to him. He put me on prednisone, gave me a tapered dose. I took the tapered dose. It was gone, so I went back. He wasn't there, and a different doctor gave me a jar, or gave me a bottle, a medicine bottle, full of prednisone. He said, take this till it's gone. I started taking it, and I started having adverse reactions. Like, I worked in a vegetable processing plant at the time, and I would come home, and my clothes would be soaking wet. And I mean, I called it the Jane Fonda workout from hell, because it was just like constant motion all the time. And I was gigantic. I was really muscular and fit and strong, but I had to take these pills or I couldn't breathe. And right when I'd walk in the front door and start to relax, every muscle in my body would start to cramp, starting with my calves and my feet and working its way up my body. I mean, my neck and my face would cramp. And I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs in the fetal position on the floor while my wife was trying to pull my limbs out, because I was just a ball. And that happened a lot. It started happening whenever I'd come home from work. It would happen. And so I went back to the doctor after a couple months of that happening, and he looked at the bottle and he looked at me. My first doctor was there, and he said, "You took this. You should be dead, my friend. You shouldn't be standing here right now." That was his exact words. And I said, hey, I've still got the bottle. I have the prescription bottle with the prednisone left in it that the doctor wrongly prescribed me. So I had a severe prednisone overdose, and it affected me. From that point on, my muscles would cramp up constantly. My calves were always on the verge of cramping. For a while, my wife had to bathe me. She would have to bathe me because I couldn't contort my limbs without them tying in knots. And she began bathing me to the point where over a couple of decades she bathed me. And it eventually worked its way out to where my muscles aren't always right on the verge of cramping. But I have serious asthma. Now, I had to get an ID card so I could take my kids out to do stuff like fishing and things like that. This was a couple of years ago. And so I went to go get to the doctor because I knew that a doctor's note or prescription could validate me to get an ID. But then he prescribed me newer, better asthma medicine. And so I started taking that. Then my wife quit being a teacher, and I stopped being covered by insurance, and I couldn't get that medicine anymore. So I got on a cheaper insurance that wasn't good. They wouldn't cover very many medicines. So then I got different medicine, but we had to pay a little bit, right? Then finally I lost all my insurance. I remember when it happened because I went to go get my medicine, and my kids were with me because they walk with me everywhere. I walked to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist came out and showed me the bill, and he goes, "Now you see that this inhaler right here is $430 something." And I just went, "Oh my God." I said, "How can that be?" And he said, "Well, you don't have insurance." Okay, we're talking about an inhaler that in India is $28, exactly the same medicine. Okay, That's really how much it is sold for. But here, that same inhaler was almost $500 with the other medicine that it goes with. That's how insane the medical industry is with hiking prices and destroying people's lives. You know, it's really evil because with technology making it so that the population increases and we all have a higher standard of living, it also makes it so that less people can actually have jobs. There's a middle point, and we've gone beyond it, where it is literally impossible for everyone to have a job. Unless you're going to start making up jobs like waivers and, you know, greeters and, you know, you can make up crap, I guess. Roof sitters, a person that sits on a roof and breathes. I don't know, what are they going to pay you for? The technology is replacing everything. So it is impossible. So, but then if you don't have a job, then you can't get insurance. And if you don't have insurance, then drugs are insane, wrongly overpriced. Like something that costs $30 in India that is exactly the same product, same medicine, same dosage, costs $430 in our country. Now, if that is legal, you know, and so I guess inadvertently it brings me back to the Kirk thing. That's what he was protesting, was that very thing, because that's what they're actually doing in our country. They're forcing you to work like a slave for money, giving you only enough money to live off of, but never save any of it. So you are a slave. And then they're making it so that if you don't continually submit to that, you cannot afford medicine no matter what. And they're promoting diets that give you cancer, so you're always going to need medicine. They make you sick, so you'll always need medicine. So that's the way, that's the circuit. That's the way it works, is they're forcing you to work, and if you don't, then you're going to get sick and die. And that's where I'm at, is I'm going to get sick and die because I can't afford medicine. And I'm expecting someone who doesn't love me and doesn't want to be around me, and I have absolutely no way to get away from here, even if I wanted to buy me medicine that's, $30. It's a $30 inhaler that I use now because it's an over-the-counter inhaler. And even though it works, I have to take it a lot more than I probably should because it's epinephrine, it's adrenaline. It's a pneumogastrically ingested shot of adrenaline from an inhaler, and that's what's keeping me alive. If I don't have it, then I'll start to suffocate, and my asthma doesn't go away. Right when I start having a trigger, I have asthma until I do something to stop myself from having asthma, and that's the only thing I can do is take an inhaler or take some kind of drug that will fight it. And so, political views aside, the criminality of what they're doing and how pure evil it is. It's like, hey, let's replace all the jobs with technology. Okay, now everyone has to work, but there's more people than ever before because of technology. So we've got more technology than ever before. We've got more people than ever before. So there literally are not enough jobs for everyone to work. So let's talk about it philosophically, right? There's someone out there that wasn't given a home to live in by a generous old lady, which I was. People can argue that up and down, when the woman who gave me this home gave it to me and my wife, who was her granddaughter, she didn't give us this home thinking, oh, well, if Aaron breaks up with you, then you'll immediately be homeless. Okay? The deal was that this was my home too. Okay? And that being said, I expect to be able to live here. And my wife has said she wants me here till my two youngest kids are adults. So once my daughter and my son are 18, my son is 18 in 8 years, I guess I'm expected to just go be homeless because I don't have any way to make money. Now I can sell things online, and I do. Last year I had to file for self-employment because I made so much money selling things on eBay. Thousands of dollars, so I had to actually report that, right? But that's not enough for me to live off of. And I need medicine immediately. Like right now, my inhaler is in the red. You can't even see it, I'm sure. There's a dial right here that shows how much medicine is left in there. And it is on the red right now. That's too blurry to see, I'm sure, but this measures it. It's metered doses. Once this runs out, something's going to trigger my asthma. It's going to be dust or whatever's floating in the air. And then I will not be able to breathe until I get another inhaler. The inhaler works. If I take it, I'll start to breathe again. And as long as I'm not triggered by something, I'll breathe for several hours or even a day or more without needing an inhaler. So that's the problem, is if I go to a doctor, they're going to act like my asthma today is mild when it's not. And if I were to somehow show them, you know, the proof of my condition, that might change the situation. But regardless of any of that, it's going to take either a hospital visit that's going to cost $1,000 or more, which we don't have, or a doctor's visit that's going to cost hundreds of dollars, which we don't have. So that's the pinch that I'm in. I'm going to suffocate over $30. That's what it really is. So I am suffocating. It really sucks. And they moved some stuff. They moved a dresser up here from the garage and moved some other stuff out of her room. And then that night, I was suffocating all night long, waking up, using an inhaler, suffocating, waking up, using an inhaler. I didn't sleep. I had to sleep during the day, and then while I'm sleeping during the day, I sleep for about an hour, then I wake up and I'm suffocating and I have to use the inhaler. So the inhaler should be lasting me a matter of weeks up to a month or more. And when these conditions, when I don't have these conditions around me all the time, then the inhaler might last me a month or two, for real. But when I get the triggers that cause me to have asthma attacks, it's not like I can just wait it out and my asthma attack will go away. I stay in that fixed suffocation mode, and it only gets worse. And you know, it's going to suck so bad because I can't pay for any of that. I can't pay for a hospital visit. I can't pay for a doctor's visit. I can't pay for the actual medicine. If I go to the pharmacy and say, hey, I need the medicine, they're going to say, okay, that'll be $500. If I go to the doctor's office without insurance, that visit's going to be hundreds of dollars. The prescription he gives me is going to be $500. If I go, if I get insurance based off of, you know, the no money that we have, I'm paying for insurance. They're only going to pay a small amount because of how little money I make. And so again, it's that circuit. So, you know, I'm in a situation where if all of a sudden I'm not making videos, the tens of people who watch my videos, if all of a sudden I'm not here for a long time, I probably suffocated to death because no one here has $30 to buy me an inhaler so that I can breathe. And so how about that? Charlie Kirk was right. Big Pharma is doing this, and they are evil. And they're doing it on purpose to suffocate me so that people get diabetes and cancer and heart disease and obesity and stuff, so that they need Ozempic because it's a wonder drug that makes them billions and billions of dollars. You know, it's like a guy coming to your house and he knocks on the door and he says, I noticed that you have windows all over your house, but do you have window insurance? And I'm like, I've never needed window insurance. I don't need window insurance. He goes, well, you might need window insurance. And then a few days later, someone's out there throwing rocks at your windows. And then your windows break, and then the guy comes up and he goes, hey, remember that window insurance I was offering you? Yeah, here's a great deal. It's even cheaper than before. It's like, okay, I'll buy that window insurance. Yeah, well, here's how much we'll pay. It's not much. You're still going to have to pay for new windows, right? Then you pay them, you get new windows, and then a couple months later, someone's throwing rocks at your windows again. It's like, oh wow, that is really how it actually is. They are giving you things that give you cancer and obesity and heart disease and diabetes. And then they're making drugs that will keep you alive but still make it so you have those problems until you die. And the whole time they're making billions and billions of dollars off of you. You know, and of course what he was protesting is why they're attacking Senator Kennedy, who is talking about the COVID vaccines. Which just saying that gets you put in a dark corner in leftist, liberal controlled media. You know, like, I have to use words like the 2019, and, you know, if somebody, I can't say that someone, you know, killed themselves. I have to say they unalive. You know, do you understand that today everyone knows unalive means suicide? Right? Everyone knows that. So do you realize how insanely retarded we are? Like, to where you can't say things anymore. You're not allowed to. We've got freedom of speech. No, you're not allowed to say these specific things that will flag you. You're a red flag, right? Because of what you just said. It is completely insane. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do a video here and I can't stop on what I'm talking about. So what I was getting at, though, is that if I go out and get a job right now, because of what I know, someone else will not be able to afford wherever it is that they're living. Because I live in a home that a generous old lady gave to me when I was married, and I'm still legally married and legally together, but we're not together, we're not married. We're spiritually separated, but we're not legally separated. We are spiritually divorced, we are not legally divorced. And this is still my home. I still live here, even though I wish I had the money and a way to get out and go live somewhere else, you know, obviously. But because I have a place to live, and because I know what's going on out there, I also know that if I go out there and get a job, that's taking away from someone else's job. And they might have a trailer or an apartment or a house they're always paying for, and they will be homeless. So it will generate homelessness if I do that. Now then I have to consider my medical condition. I have to get a job, true, I do. I have to get a car and a job and follow all that stuff again, even though I'll be 50 next year and I haven't worked in 15 or more years, and I've been raising kids the whole entire time, you know, who don't love me. Half of them, most of them won't even acknowledge my existence anymore. I have a condition where doctors won't admit that it's severe. So there's no way I'm getting on disability or anything like that, of course. But if I go work at a job, the second I get exposed to one of my triggers, animal dander, dust, ragweed, pollen, corn silk, powder, I've had diatomaceous earth, dust from the earth caused the reaction. So when any of that triggers me, I'm not going to be much use to wherever it is that I'm working. It really is, you know, more of a no-win situation than what most people are already stuck in. And of course, anyone can say, you need to go out and get a job, and I can tell them, shut the fuck up. I can actually say that to them, because you're not me. For you to be me, okay, I'm going to have to strangle the shit out of you so you can't breathe, and then you'll understand what it's like to be in my situation. Take a big deep breath, okay? Now imagine if you couldn't do that at all. Then you can understand through imagining it, okay? Get both hands and stick them around your neck and squeeze. Now try to breathe while you're choking yourself to death. That's the situation that I'm in. Now, do you want to go out and work? You want to go get a job and flip burgers? And do you want to be a clerk and count money? Do you want to go work somewhere and suffocate every day all the time? No, it doesn't work that way. And yes, I'm sure you can tell me I screwed up. Yeah, I did screw up. You know, I trusted the wrong people. That's the way I truly screwed up. When someone tells you constantly that they'll never leave you and that they'll never stop loving you, they'll never give up on you, that you'll always be together. They tell you that over and over. Anytime you ever have a doubt, anytime you ever are afraid, you have a nightmare, you're scared, anytime anything comes into question, then that same answer comes up. I'll never stop loving you, I'll never leave you, I'll never give up on you. You don't have anything to worry about. You hear that 1,000 times. And then you trust that person. That's what I did. That's why I'm in the situation I'm in. So, you do not want to be in the situation that I'm in. It sucks. Now I'm trying to make this game. Okay, so I'd like to ease back into the situation where I can explain what I'm doing here. Just an emotional wreck from everything that's happening. I watched a beautiful woman get her throat slashed. I watched a guy who supports the most beautiful aspects of the Constitution, freedom of speech, and our rights to openly, peacefully debate with each other, get shot to death in front of his wife and small children. Okay, so what you're seeing here are different characters, and I've made these different characters, as I said, using the missiles that are part of the sprites to add extra details to each of them. They're also different color schemes, and I have basically 2 different detail bodies for each side. We're going to say that the left side are the heroes, so this guy here, he's a hero and he's a heel. He's a bad guy. And I have come up with 12 distinct color combinations, and I'm going through the process of adding sprite differences using the missiles and stuff to make each one of them look as different as I possibly can. And then I'll end up with 24 wrestlers. 12 good guys and 12 bad guys. Now, find me a wrestling game out there that has 24 different wrestlers. So when this is done, if I can get this done, which I'm hoping I can, then it will be 12 different matches that a person will have if they fight against every opposing wrestler. Now, of course, it's not going to be any cloning. I'm not going to have one wrestler against an identical wrestler. And it's great because this isn't Street Fighter 2. This isn't a game where that would be something that would be expected, right? But it will be a lot of wrestlers. And I'm hoping to be able to make significant differences in the way each of them behaves, so that you can have different moves, like make one of them be a brawler where they basically punch and maybe body slam and clothesline, make another one do suplexes and locks and technical headlocks and technical moves, make another one do lots of flying, jumping moves like jumping splash attacks and drop kicks and stuff. Try to make them all have little differences about them so that when a person tries a different wrestler out, it's a different experience. Now, someone commented that he said that what did he say? Something like it's as good or better than this other place that makes games. Good deal, maybe, or something like that. I don't remember what he said, honestly. And he did a wink, like a winking emoji on its side. And I don't know. I hope that's a good comment. I really don't know. I commented and said, that their games look really great, but they do follow the Atari line rule. Okay? So let's go right back into what that is. What is the Atari line rule for anyone who's watching my videos, anybody loves Atari games? The Atari is a different system than any other video game system that's ever been made. When they made the Atari VCS, the video computer system, they couldn't call it a video game because like Magnavox or someone else owned that. They barely got away with putting cartridges in it, so they called it the VCS, which was a video computer system. Later they called it the 2600, which was its numerical designation. Okay? They were still figuring out how they were going to make graphics with this game system when it was first being, designed and come up with. So it makes video game graphics in a different way than any other game system does. It draws everything with lines that start from one side and then end at a breaking point. So all of the graphics on the background are rows of lines. All of the graphics of the characters are rows of lines of color. So by doing that, you can have a character that has lots of different color, up to 128 colors. I guess you could make a character that's the whole width of the playfield from top to bottom and just fill it in with colors. That's fine. It's a little crazy, but you could do that, okay? But later on, and what this implies is that there are no tiles being done. This is all lines of color and that's it. So when you see an Atari game, you always see those lines of color. Okay, but you don't see overlapping color usually on an Atari game's graphics. They have to do little tricks somehow to get the colors to look like they're overlapping, like with what came out later with tile and sprite graphics. Okay? What I've done is made graphics that look like tile and sprite graphics on the Atari 2600. And I'm doing a special kind of way of doing that is different than what is usually done. I've only seen one other programmer use the method that I'm using out of every Homebrew or every Atari game that I've ever seen. So this is not a method that is common, and it's not normal. Okay? So these are not normal Atari graphics. Now I do use higher resolution, I use higher resolution backgrounds than what you usually see on Atari, but I use lower resolution player graphics. So the player graphics are all drawn with little square chunks. They're not single pixel, they're probably quad pixels, but they're squares. So that's why you'll see the larger, thicker lines when compared to some of the Atari graphics out there. My graphics look slightly chunkier, but they do look like sprites in that there are lines around, there are different colors that overlap and that are around each other, like a Nintendo sprite. Okay? So, no, it doesn't look like other Homebrew because those other guys are making things either using development kits or assembly, and they're still stuck in the Atari line rule where everything is lines of color. And I've seen games from, I don't knock these guys. Their games are awesome. I want some of these games, okay? So don't think that I'm against that stuff. But I think that my graphics, at least to a degree, do look better. Yeah, they look better than what's usually seen or done on an Atari 2600. It's different, okay? And if you like graphics from the Nintendo and stuff, I think this has a unique appeal to it because I have large blocks of color, but then I also have layered colors like a tile sprite. So this method, I am actually detailing where the missiles go, okay? And I have to detail where they go based on what side the character is on. If you notice, he moved over, now it's a little bit different. Okay? So I might have to go in there and write some code to adjust where the missile parts go for the enhancement of the character based on whether they're to the left or the right of the other character. But I'm making code that allows me to do that. That's me right there. Okay. And now when I start doing that code, it's a big cluster. And later on, it will be divided out into little chunks. So here's one of those clusters. The 12 different characters that could happen are V, in this case it's V, the characters are either U or V, those are the variable I'm using. Okay, so I have 12 different characters there, and then the color, the first color is right there. Any kind of size differences here. New size will regulate the width of the player or the width of the missile, and then where the missile is in that first frame. So because I'm doing 2 frames, I have 2 instances of new size, I have 2 instances of color, I have 2 instances of missile XY. I have 2 missiles for each sprite. And I'm layering those in different ways. Now I've done 10, 11, and 12 are done. I need to mark those on my list too, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And also 1, 2, and 3 are done. But if I go ahead and activate one that's not done yet, which I'll go ahead and do real quick, we'll pick 4. And I need to look on my list here because certain ones use different. 4 is K1 and G1. So that's the different character models that those color arrangements and missile arrangements use. Okay, I'll start it up, and here you can see the one on the left has actually had his additional missile details added, but the one on the right, you can see above his head, if you can see it. I'll go ahead and put it in, there we go, different spot. We'll put him here. You can see the 2 missiles. They're above his head, right there. And what those are the little missiles, and I'm just telling them based on the XY coordinates modifiers. So because that character's XY coordinates are variables that will always change, all I have to do to decide where those 2 little missiles will go on his body is say the XY coordinate variable and then add or subtract from its placement. So I'll say if the XY coordinate for his x-axis is X, then I'll say missile 1X equals X. And then if I want it to be to the right 2 pixels, I'll say X plus 2. And then that would move that specific missile 2 places to the right. And so when I look at that character, I can move it wherever. He looks cool the way he is. I don't have to have it there. I can hide it on his body somewhere or get rid of it. But looking at the character, I can add more detail. I can make his chin larger. I can give him, like with the guy on the left, he has a thicker eyebrow and his eyes are thinner. I don't know if that can be seen well on the camera. Let's zoom in on him a little. Okay, so he looks different than the last guy using that sprite. Okay, now the guy on the right, I think he kind of looks like Ric Flair. Maybe he'll be my Ric Flair character. I can add those 2 little missiles anywhere on his body, anywhere to add, and they can. And right now they're set to a specific width. They're set to 2 pixels wide, but I can make them 4 or 8 pixels wide. Now 8 pixels wide I'm not going to use because it's just going to take up the entire width of the sprite. So really I'm using 1 pixel wide, 2 pixels wide, or 4 pixels wide. But I'm not going to go beyond that for the placement of it for details. But that can add a change in the way the hair is. It can add eyebrows. It can add a wider mouth. It can add a mustache. It can add a beard. It can add lots of different things. On one of them, I made the t-shirt go down further on his abdomen. Okay, any little tiny details that make the character stand out other than the obvious color differences will make it that much more unique. Okay, so this is the method I'm using to create unique wrestlers in this game. So we're going to end up, like I said, we're going to end up with 24 unique wrestlers, 12 heroes and 12 heels.